Snowtown. Between 1992 and 1999, in the forgotten suburbs of Adelaide, Australia, 11 people were tortured and murdered. Their bodies were found in a bank vault in the small town of Snowtown, decomposing in acid-filled barrels. This is Australia's worst serial killing spree, but Snowtown isn't a film about those murders, not really. It's about how evil recruits, how it grooms, how it transforms ordinary people into accomplices, and how a vulnerable boy named Jamie became trapped in a nightmare that looked, at first, like salvation. This is horror without monsters, because the real monsters look like us. We meet 16-year-old Jamie living in Elizabeth, an impoverished suburb north of Adelaide. Director Justin Kurzel shoots this world in washed-out colors. Everything is gray, depressing, suffocating. These are public housing communities where poverty and abuse are generational cycles. Nobody escapes. Jamie's home life is a quiet catastrophe. His father is absent. His mother, Elizabeth, is trying her best, but she's overwhelmed, raising 4 boys on her own. Then she brings her boyfriend into their home, a man who sexually abuses Jamie and his brothers. When Elizabeth discovers it, she throws him out, but the damage is done. Jamie retreats into himself. He's a sensitive kid, trapped in a brutal environment with no language to express his trauma. He's exactly the kind of vulnerable target that predators recognize. Then, John Bunting seems like everything Jamie needs. He's charismatic, confident, and protective, played with chilling authenticity by Daniel Henshaw. John presents himself as a man who cares about the community, who sees the pedophiles and drug addicts destroying the neighborhood, and who's willing to do something about it. He starts hosting meetings at Elizabeth's house, gatherings where neighbors vent their rage about the perverts among them. John leads these sessions with the energy of a cult leader. He identifies targets. He builds paranoia. He makes everyone feel complicit in his worldview. Us versus them. Good versus evil. And Jamie, desperate for a father figure, for someone who seems strong enough to protect him from the darkness, falls completely under John's spell. This is where Snowtown becomes truly disturbing. Kurzel doesn't show us a cackling villain. He shows us the banality of evil, how fascism and violence grow in living rooms over cigarettes and beer, through whispered conversations that slowly normalize the unthinkable. John doesn't immediately talk about murder. He builds to it. First, it's just humiliating a suspected pedophile, making him strip, recording him, breaking him psychologically. The group laughs. It feels like justice, like protecting the community. But it's a gateway. John recruits Troy's older brother into his inner circle. Together with Robert Wagner and Mark Hayden, they begin killing. The victims aren't random. They're people from the community, marginalized individuals, many with disabilities or social issues, people who won't be missed or whose disappearances can be easily explained. John has learned to hunt within the system's blind spots. What's horrifying isn't just the murders, it's the mundane evil surrounding them. They kill someone, then have dinner. They torture a victim in the bathroom while someone watches TV in the next room. They involve Jamie slowly in the cleanup, in the lies, making him complicit before he fully understands what's happening. Jamie is trapped in a psychological prison. John has become his protector, his masculine role model, but John is also grooming him, using affection and approval as weapons. When Jamie shows hesitation, John manipulates him, reminds him of his abuse, frames the murders as justice, makes him feel like refusing would be a betrayal. There's a scene where John forces Jamie to participate in torturing someone Jamie knows. The camera stays on Jamie's face, the horror, the confusion, the desperate need to please John, warring with his own conscience. It's one of the most disturbing scenes in modern cinema because it doesn't feel like a movie. It feels like watching a soul break in real time. Snowtown refuses to sensationalize. Director Justin Kurzel, in his feature debut, shoots the film with almost clinical detachment. There's no score during the murders, no dramatic lighting, just the awful reality of violence happening in ordinary places, bathrooms, living rooms, sheds. The bodies end up in barrels in a bank vault in Snowtown because John and his accomplices are also committing welfare fraud, continuing to collect their victims' government benefits. The evil here isn't grand or theatrical, it's pathetic and greedy and human. When the barrels are discovered in 1999, Australia is shocked by the sheer scale of the horror. But the trial reveals something even more disturbing. How many people in the community knew something was wrong, but said nothing. How John operated in plain sight, protected by a culture of silence and the invisibility of his victims. Snowtown isn't entertainment. It's an endurance test. A film that sits in your stomach like a stone for days after watching it. But it's also important. It's a film about how fascist thinking takes root, how vulnerable people, especially boys, are recruited into violence by older men who offer them belonging and purpose, how entire communities can become complicit in evil through willful ignorance. Jamie is based on a real person, James Vlasikis, who was convicted as an accomplice despite being groomed from adolescence. The film doesn't excuse his actions, but it forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about culpability, trauma, and how cycles of abuse perpetuate themselves. This is horror that doesn't end when the credits roll. Because John Bunting wasn't supernatural, he was a real person. And the conditions that created him, poverty, isolation, abuse, communities abandoned by institutions meant to protect them, still exist. Snowtown is a masterpiece of Australian